It's Monday and it's the final full week of NUFC Transfer Daily. Newcastle are in action against Liverpool tonight, so we'll be looking ahead to that game, talking more about Alexander Isak and also where Newcastle could go for a striker signing this week. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to another week on the channel. Newcastle have got a striker to sign. We will be discussing that today, but before we get into it, please do hit like, subscribe. We did just pass 1,800 subscribers last week and 250,000 views. Really chuffed with that, so thanks so much. But yeah, today all about the strikers, and Newcastle were linked with one new name by Craig Hope last week, and that is Alexander Sorloth. So we're going to start with him. Former Crystal Palace striker, really struggled there. Pretty much been one of Europe's most prolific goal scorers everywhere else since. I mean, he went on loan or for a season at Trabzonspor, scored 22 goals, and then he scored hatfuls of goals in Spain for 3 different clubs: Real Sociedad, Villarreal and Atletici Madrid. He actually played in the Sela Cup, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. Has played 2 games this season, scored 1 goal, 20 goals last season, I think 24 for Villarreal, 23 the season before. Non-penalty goals 99th percentile in Europe, as I've said. Non-penalty expected goals the same. Shots total 97th percentile. Non-expected goals and expected assists 98th percentile. Touches 93rd percentile. Progressive carries 82nd percentile. Clearances and aerial duels won as a 6'4" striker, 94th percentile. So very good across the board. A very good target man, a very good goal scorer, a very good box player, but links up well, gets on the end of crosses. Before we discuss any strikers on this video, and there is a strange rumour linking Will Osula with a move away, which I will discuss a little bit later. Alexander Isak is looking set to stay. We may as well touch on this first, actually. Ahead of the Liverpool game, lots of talk about him tonight because of who Newcastle are facing and all of the stuff that's going to be around that. It's going to be very interesting, but he will not be involved. Eddie Howe said that, but it is becoming more and more likely that he'll stay at Newcastle, partly because of the 2 conditions we've mentioned about the valuation, 150 million, but also having 2 replacements. And after Benjamin Sesko went to Manchester United, I've pretty much said since then that this deal can't happen, and I think the club have understood that, and you know their search for a replacement striker of that quality, of Isak's quality. Gonzalo Ramos has been linked, but wages and the price of that deal is too much. They may be open to a loan. Nicholas Jackson's never really got off the ground, I think, for valuation reasons as well. So Newcastle haven't looked for an Isak replacement. They've only ever looked for a Wilson replacement since then. And Isak's statement of desperation last Tuesday really backfired, and actually Newcastle's positions hardened quite significantly since then, and a deal looks very unlikely optically in terms of pride and saving face. But even if the valuation is met, I think the fact that Newcastle are no longer looking for a replacement for Isak suggests they have their stance. And Fabrizio Romano said over the weekend that Newcastle hope to have Isak back in training this week after the Liverpool game. So lots of people have said that Liverpool might make a bid and it might step up in that direction after the Liverpool game, which may well happen. It may well be possible that happens, and Liverpool are, I would imagine, planning one more big bid to try and force their issue, because they haven't got any other plans by the sound of it. They're looking at Isak and Isak only. So they'll want to sign him before the window shuts. They also need a centre-back as well. So lots of their fans are getting a little bit twitchy about the whole situation with Isak and the lack of options that they have in attack compared to last season, given that Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz have gone, and obviously Diogo Jota sadly is no longer with us. So they've got some striker vacancies, and they're not looking elsewhere. So you'd imagine that they will come back in with an Isak bid, but it just doesn't feel like Newcastle are really in a position to accept this deal. It feels now like it's almost certain that he'll stay. You can never say for certain because things can change very quickly in football, but to me at the moment it feels like Isak will be at Newcastle, and if he reintegrates this week into training, I don't think he'll be in the squad for Leeds. That is an outside bet, but I did say on the True Faith podcast that I did think maybe it would, because that's what happened to Johan Kabay. And then obviously he'll come back in for the Wolves game. Most likely that's probably where it'll start. Just after the international break, it'll be interesting to see if he's in the Sweden squad, given that he's not been in any competitive action since May. But John Dahl Thomason has obviously been speaking about this, so I think he probably will be. But yeah, Newcastle are not looking for an Isak replacement, which is why I think Sørloth would be an interesting option. I think he wants to leave Atletico Madrid. I think Atletico Madrid are open to a sale at the right price. He's available, 29 years old, so not a long-term solution. The Owen Wissa stuff is stagnant. It's dormant at the moment because Brentford haven't reneged on their price, and it feels a little bit like the Isak scenario again. And obviously, given that Isak is looking like he's going to stay, it looks like Wissa is more likely to stay at Brentford. He's back in training, wasn't in the squad for the game at the weekend, a win over Aston Villa, but it feels like that could be something to watch from a Brentford perspective. So Sørloth's a good option. We've been through his stats and his goals and his physical prowess, and the fact that he gets on the end of crosses. We've mentioned Strand Larsen, and we'll touch on him in a second. But the physical aspect of what those two players bring, the difference, if you like, to Isak. Newcastle have looked at different options. Obviously, with Sesko, he's very different to Isak in the way he is dominant in the air and leads the line as a more traditional number 9. Ekitike, who Newcastle had as an idea to come, first of all, to come in and play alongside Isak, but long-term contingency plan is very similar to Isak in his movement and his ability to get on the ball and drop deep and all those sorts of things. Sørloth and Strand Larsen, but in this context, Sørloth, are very different players. They're physical, they can get on the end of crosses, and I think that's really what Newcastle would benefit from in a second striker. So if this deal were possible at the right price, and it feels like it is because he wants to go, Atletico look like they are likely to sanction it, and they only bought him for £30 million last year. If they can get that deal for in the 20s of millions, I think that's an excellent no-brainer. I know he struggled at Crystal Palace about 6 or 7 years ago, but ever since he's been so impressive in front of goal for Norway as well, but not just in Turkey, but Spain, which I think, if you've listened to any of the videos that I've done this summer, you'd know that I don't overly value Premier League experience, but I do value very highly top 5 league in Europe experience. I think that is where it's transferable, and obviously Champions League experience as well. This would be a really sensible signing. I hope people don't just look at his Crystal Palace days and see that he struggled a little bit, and that was a long time ago. I think now he's gone on to do better things at other big clubs, and his numbers in Spain are so consistent and so good in such a good way that it feels like Newcastle could be on something if the deal is there to be done. Strand Larsen went off injured, I think, this week for Wolves, so we'll see on whether that plays out in any way. But they have also made moves for an attacking player, Christian Uche from Getafe. So will that have any impact on Strand Larsen's future? We'll have to see. But the most interesting one today is Sørloth, because that is a deal that, for the first time, I think that is a very easy deal to do from Newcastle's perspective. Every single party in that deal would want it to be done. So it could be very much one to watch, I think, in the last week. Quickly, just on Will Osula, there was a lot of strange rumours linking him with a move to Bayer Leverkusen and a lot of Bundesliga clubs over the weekend. And I think in principle Newcastle would be open to a deal for Osula because he hasn't progressed as much as maybe he would have liked, but Eddie Howe doesn't quite seem to trust him. Even, I think it said a lot that he didn't come off the bench earlier against Aston Villa when Newcastle needed a goal and they didn't have any other options. He only came off the bench. And stylistically, he's so well suited to Newcastle. Everything that I listed earlier about Isak and Ekitike and Sørloth, those things, he's kind of got a lot of those attributes, but he still doesn't play very regularly. So ordinarily, Newcastle would probably be open to this deal, but I can't see it because of the lack of strikers that Newcastle have. Why would you let go of your third and one and only striker that you have out and out available at the moment on the books? So I can't see that one happening at the moment, but I don't think in principle Newcastle would be against it because of the reality that Osula is not the player that maybe Newcastle hoped he would be at this stage. Let me know what you think on Sørloth, on Osula, on the Isak situation. What do you think the score will be tonight against Liverpool as well? I did say I would do an instant reaction, but I think it would just get lost because I'll be back tomorrow doing another transfer video. So we'll open up tomorrow's Transfer Daily with a review and a reaction to tonight's game against Liverpool. I'm not there because the press box is so oversubscribed, which I think says a lot about the narrative and the storyline in this game. But yeah, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the players discussed today. Cheers.